You think your job is brutal? Toss the emails, numbers, and traffic jams out of your head. The Middle Ages didn't run on calendars. It ran on stench, sickness, and death, waiting just beyond the door. Come along. Don't blink every time you look away. Another floor of hell opens under our feet. We start where time smells like quicklime and history boils in a foul ferment no one dares name. Number 1. The Tanner. This is the place every royal boot, every knight's saddle, every strap, pouch, and soft armor passed through. Raw hides arrived whole horns, hooves, fat, and hair still clinging. First came scraping, shaving, soaking, and washing, often in the same river that filled the town's jugs. Then the real test, dehairing in pits of lime and baiting slop, fermented with human urine and even excrement. Medieval towns routinely shoved tanneries outside the walls and downwind. Runoff ate bridge timbers and poisoned fish, and the smell bullied its way into every alley. Imagine noon heat, a dead cow, and a public latrine with the volume turned until the dial snaps. Hands blistered and split under alkali. Fumes scoured lungs. The stench settled into hair, clothes, and sleep. Children of tanners were identified by scent long before anyone asked their names. Yet their output ran through everything. Boots for marches, scabbards for blades, tack and harness for horses, bellows for forges, water skins for travel, even bookbindings for monasteries. The city might sneer, but the city paid an odor tax to survive. Even contempt had a price tag, and it was paid in leather. To keep pace with orders, tanners rotated hides through multiple pits like a grim assembly line, liming, baiting, tanning, drying, finishing. Bark, tannins, oak, chestnut, sumac stained the hands the way the pits stained the air. A master could feel a hide and tell its fate. A soldier's boot, a monk's cover, a merchant's purse. There was craft here, just very little glory. Lift your eyes from those seething pits to the skyline. Blocks the size of oxen float upward on ropes. Leather straps cinch and creak as a wooden cage turns. If tanners powered the walk on the ground, wheel walkers powered the climb into heaven. Number 2. The wheel walker. A treadwheel hoist room-sized timbers bolted to scaffolds that licked the clouds turned footsteps into lift for stone, timber, mortar, even church bells. Inside, 1 or 2 men walked like metronomes. There were no rails, no harness, no net. If a line frayed or a pulley seized, the wheel could whip backward like a demon, shattering shins between spokes and throwing a man into blue emptiness. Foremen noted falls as if they were weather. Tragic, yes, but work never stopped. Stone doesn't pity. Stone wants altitude. Crews added crude safety tricks, wooden pawls jammed into ratchets, belts looped to spokes, but the very devices meant to save you could crush you if the wheel reversed. Diaries and site accounts mention loads of lime, sand, and beams rising at the same pace as men's heartbeats. Every step could be the one that broke a line or a life. Cathedrals climbed inch by inch, and so did the body count written nowhere, known by everyone. And still the wheel turned, because the nave had to grow, and bells had to ring. From up there, the city sounded different. Wind against canvas tarps, gulls shouting at roof lines, the rasp of rope over oak, and below it all the faint chant of masons setting blocks. Wheel walkers learned to read the tremor in a line, the gossip of a pulley, the lie in a supervisor's smile. Skill kept you alive, but only until the day it didn't. But for every miracle that rose into the sky, a mess collected below. When torches flickered in the alleys and curfew bells tolled, another shift woke up. If heights could kill with a fall, cesspits could kill without a sound. Number 3. The Gong Farmer. When the city slept, cesspit men worked. From 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., they levered open vaults and climbed into pits compacted by years into something like clay. Methane and hydrogen sulfide turned the air itself into a trap. A spark meant fireworks, but more often a man simply fainted, slipped, and vanished without a cry. Rotten walls fell in, floorboards pulped underfoot, rope handles snapped at the worst moment. A 1,325 London note names Richard the Raker, who drowned in what he was paid to remove. The carts rolled anyway. Night soil went out through the gates to market gardens. By dawn, the same city that pinched its nose ate the vegetables it had paid to produce. Pay could run higher than ordinary day wages precisely because almost no one could stomach it. Tools were simple: shovel, tub, rope, a rag steeped in vinegar, a tallow torch. Their signature arrived before they did. The smell traveled faster than footsteps and made even thieves keep their distance. Invisible by day, indispensable by night. That was the contract no one admitted to signing. They mapped the city by stink and slope, memorized which alleys pooled gas and which vaults were ready to cave. A veteran could tell by the pitch of a bubble whether to climb or hold his breath. Courage helped, but caution kept you employed. The pit did not negotiate twice. Yet there was one figure the crowd avoided more fiercely than the men of the pits, the man who stood in the square at noon. If cesspit workers handled shame in the dark, the executioner handled fear in broad daylight. Up next is the executioner, the necessary outcast. Legal on parchment. Untouchable in the marketplace. Pedestrians dodged his eyes. Priests dodged his blessing. Bakers dodged his coins. His craft went beyond ropes and axes, branding irons, severed hands for thieves, the breaking wheel. Public justice was theater, a shouted verdict, a blade that caught the sun, a crowd that learned its lesson. He was the only actor denied a bow. Off days were grim moonlighting, carcass clearing, brothel supervision, sometimes even cesspit shifts. In parts of the German world, the trade passed from father to son, hereditary exile wrapped in steady pay. Technique mattered. A clean stroke was merciful. Botches were scandals. But perfection didn't buy acceptance. Communities needed justice to have a face and demanded that face never sit at their table. He upheld the law and paid with his life while still breathing. Some towns kept a separate bench for him at taverns. Some priests refused communion. Some markets fixed prices differently when his hand held the coin. He knew the weight of silence better than any sentence he carried out. In a city of many trades, he alone worked in public and lived in private. And when the square emptied and supper steam rose from kitchens, a quieter ritual began elsewhere. The sick wanted balance, the doctors wanted blood, and someone had to supply the tool. From fear in the open square, we stepped to leeches in the shadows. Number 5 is the leech collector bleeding for the cure. Before microscopes and antibiotics, doctors aimed to rebalance the four humors. That meant bleeding. Leeches were cheap and convincing. Collectors waded into stagnant ponds, calves bare, holding still until the worms smelled heat and latched on, injecting hirudin so the blood ran freely. By day's end, skin was shredded, blood seeped for hours, infection brewed in the cuts, and shivers from cold gave way to fainting from blood loss. Paid in blood our own first, they joked, because gallows humor is cheaper than bread. They knew the rich ponds and the hungry hours, how to peel a leech without tearing flesh, how to keep jars alive to market. Then the irony. The same leeches, fat with marsh blood from a poor man's legs, were pressed onto silk-soft skin in a townhouse bed. The widest gap in Europe was suddenly bridged by a living straw. Faith in the cure flowed one way. The cost of the cure flowed the other. And yet there are storms no superstition can weather. Collectors learned to carry ash or brine to make leeches release, to bind calves with rough cloth so the worms took hold quickly, to bargain hard with apothecaries who preferred profit to pity. Their craft sat halfway between medicine and misery, a supply chain powered by open wounds. When the Black Death arrived, balances broke, and bravery went mute. Wheels fell silent. Brands went cold. Jars lost their power. There remained only the men who pushed carts and opened graves. Number 6. The Plague Burier. Between 1348 and 1351, Europe turned into bells and stench. A third to over half of many towns vanished. Buriers knotted vinegar-soaked rags over their mouths and followed the seeker of the dead door to door. "Bring out your dead," was warning and plea. "Don't make us wait." Some days they lifted strangers, some days neighbors, some days their own. There was no time for names or farewells. Graves became trenches, lime, bodies, a geology of emergency. Shovels rang on bone like spoons in bowls. White dust settled on hair and sleeves. The smell soaked vestments and stalked the sleep of survivors. When a burrier failed, his mates laid him in the trench he had cut and buried the shovel with him, the cheapest headstone on earth. They were buying days with death, and the math never favored them. They didn't save lives so much as they saved the living from surrendering to rot, but without them, the living would have drowned in the dead. Carts wore grooves into city lanes, bells lost count, records shrank to lists of pits. The burrier's pay could triple and still not purchase safety. In the end, his only guarantee was the same work performed for him by a friend. And so our ladder ends where the earth closes. From stink to height, from darkness to spectacle, from blood to lime the pattern holds. Nameless hands carry the weight, so the rest can look away. Now let's climb back up and talk about what we owe. Zoom out. Smell, height, darkness, fear, blood, and mass death. Each job among the poor climbed so the city could breathe. You could read a medieval map by the wind, who inhaled clean air, who inhaled the invoice. Every splendor, boots, smooth carriages, sunlight in the nave grew roots in mud, sweat, excrement, and ash. History isn't clean, it's well hidden, and the fingerprints on our monuments are cracked with alkali and rope burn. Civilization doesn't stand on clouds, it stands on backs. Tomorrow, when you lace leather, cross a stone square, and step beneath a floating vault, remember the nameless hands that made it possible and the 2 words that settle a fraction of the debt. Thank you. If you're still here, you've walked through every earthly hell the Middle Ages could invent, smelled alkali on a tanner's hands, felt the sway in a wheel, gulped bad air in a pit, stood in an executioner's shadow, watched blood string from a collector's calves, and followed the creaking cart to a white-dusted trench. These weren't jobs, they were sacrifices, filthy, necessary, nearly erased, and what we admire now stands on their spines. For more unvarnished stories, the truth behind the legends and the lives textbooks, skip subscribe to Flow of History and ring the bell. Tell us in the comments which moment hit you hardest so we can dig deeper there next time. We don't polish the past, we dig it up and drag it into the light, one forgotten soul at a time.